When my grandfather was a boy growing up in Fiji in the mid-late 1950s, he and his siblings experienced some strange occurrences on our family land. They lived in a one-story house on the estate, and every day they had to go down to the river to get buckets of fresh water. Every now and then my grandpa would hear these odd slurping noises coming from the kitchen area which were keeping him awake at night. He tried to convince his older brothers to go see what the sound was, but they were already sleeping and just told him to ignore it or go away. So one night he plucked up the courage to go see what it was. He told me that hunched over one of the buckets on the kitchen bench was the shadowy figure of a small child, so dark it was practically black. In fact, all he could really see of it was the whites of its eyes and teeth. It stopped drinking, looked at him, smiled and ran off. He told me he followed it outside just in time to see it scurry under the house, so he got on his hands and knees and crawled after it, but once he was there it had disappeared. He said he was under there for a while lifting up chickens looking for this thing, but it was gone. But that was not the last time he would see it. A couple of nights later he was drifting off to sleep and looking at the big tree just outside his window when he noticed something on one of the branches moving in an unnatural way. His eyes strained in the darkness trying to make out what it was when he realized it was the thing. The small figure from the other night. He darted out of bed and into his parents' room in such a panic they could barely make sense of his words. That continued for weeks, he told me so. Eventually his parents were forced to move one of his brothers into his room in hopes to ease his imagination. It worked. For a little while. One night as he was on the brink of sleep he heard his little brother call out to him. He rolled over to see him, eyes wide and frozen, just staring out the window. He followed his gaze up the tree and right to the little dark figure sitting on the branch just looking down at them with such a big white smile it almost took up half its face. They stayed awake that night, afraid to move, just looking back at the black figure and its glowing white teeth and eyes. The following morning they begged their parents and siblings to believe them, but they just assumed it was a nightmare. As my grandpa and his brother got ready for bed that night they decided to sleep in the same bed because they were both so scared. He told me he awoke to his younger brother shaking his arm and calling his name again, but when he looked up, the black figure had moved closer to the window. Unblinking and still smiling down at them, it dived off the branch, into their window, coming right for them. It engulfed them in the room in complete darkness. He says he doesn't remember what happened after that, but the next morning he climbed up the tree and hung a rosary on the branch. He said neither him or his brother ever seen it again. To this day the lot of them still refuse to walk past cemeteries or big old houses at night. It's actually quite cute and funny, but I would do the same if I were them.